A woman sits across from her lawyer, determined to get a divorce. Lawyer. All right, before we proceed, we need a valid reason. Is he refusing to give you money? Woman. Money? If he so much as hides a single dollar from me, I won't cook for him for 3 days straight. Lawyer. Okay. Is he physically abusive? Woman. Him? Please. If he ever tried, I'd throw him out the window, with my left hand. Lawyer raises an eyebrow. All right. What about infidelity? Woman leans in with a smirk. Now that's where we've got him. The second child isn't even his. 1. In the cafeteria of a Catholic elementary school, the children lined up for lunch. At the front of the line sat a large tray of apples. A nun had placed a note beside them that read, "Take only one. God is watching." Further down the line, at the other end of the table, was a towering pile of chocolate chip cookies. A clever student had scribbled a note next to them. "Take as many as you want. God is watching the apples." 2. Doctor. I have some bad news and some very bad news. Patient. Well, might as well give me the bad news first. Doctor. The lab called with your test results. They said you have 24 hours to live. Patient. 24 hours? That's terrible. What could be worse than that? What's the very bad news? Doctor. I've been trying to reach you since yesterday. 3. A young pastor sat in a restaurant, enjoying his lunch. As he ate, he opened a letter from his mother, which had arrived that morning. When he unfolded it, a $20 bill fluttered onto the table. Thanks, Mom, he thought. I really needed this right now. As he finished his meal, he noticed a beggar leaning against a lamppost outside. The man looked down on his luck, and the pastor felt a tug at his heart. He hesitated for a moment, then made a decision. Pulling the envelope back out, he crossed out the names and, in large letters, wrote, "Persevere." Without drawing attention to himself, he tucked the bill back inside, placed the envelope under his arm, and casually dropped it as he walked past the man. The beggar picked it up, read the message, and smiled. The next day, as the pastor sat down for another meal, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning, he saw the same man, grinning and holding out a thick wad of cash. Bewildered, the pastor asked, "What's this?" The man chuckled. "You're half of the winnings. Persevere came in first in the 4th race at the track yesterday, paid 30 to 1. 4. They took the men of village as hostages. The head of terrorists wanted to have some fun this time. He called the wives of the men to the camp of terrorists. He put bandage to women's eyes and told men to lose their pants. Terrorists turned to the women and said, "You are going to touch everybody one by one. If you find your husband, that couple will be saved. If you can't find, wife and husband will die." After that, first woman started to check one by one. Not this, husband." She found right and both were spared. Then second woman came. Not this, nope, husband." She was also right, both were again spared. Third one. Not this, husband." Again right. This situation continued to appear. As a result, terrorists got bored and entered the queue. Next women came and started. Not this, not from village, not this, husband." 5. An elderly woman walked into her doctor's office with a surprising request. When the doctor asked what brought her in, she calmly replied, "I'd like to have some birth control pills." A bit taken aback, the doctor paused and asked, "Mrs. Smith, you're 72 years old. What on earth would you need birth control pills for?" Without missing a beat, the woman responded, "They help me sleep better." Now even more confused, the doctor pressed, "How in the world do birth control pills help you sleep?" The woman grinned and said, "It's simple. I put them in my granddaughter's orange juice every morning, and I sleep like a baby at night." Sometimes, the best remedy for a good night's sleep is a bit of mischievous humor. 6. Tim finally decided to marry his longtime girlfriend. One evening, shortly after the honeymoon, He was in the garage organizing his golf clubs when his new wife walked in and watched him silently. After a while, she broke the silence. "Tim, now that we're married, maybe it's time you quit golfing. You spend so much time on the course, and I'm sure you could sell your clubs for a good price." Tim froze, his face horrified. "What's wrong, darling?" she asked, concerned. "For a second," he said, "you sounded just like my ex-wife." "Ex-wife?" she shouted. "I didn't know you were married before." "I wasn't," he replied. 7. A police officer was investigating a collision on a narrow, two-lane road where the drivers had nearly crashed head-on. One of the drivers, an elderly woman, kept repeating, "He wouldn't let me have my half of the road." After gathering all the details, the officer marched over to the other driver, who was inspecting the damage to his car. "That lady insists you wouldn't let her have her half of the road," the officer said. "Why not?" With a frustrated sigh, the man turned away from his wrecked vehicle and replied, "Officer, I would have gladly given her half the road, if only she had decided which half she wanted." 8. A boy, his father, and his mother are having dinner, but the boy refuses to eat his broccoli. "Eat your broccoli," says the mother. "No," the boy shouts defiantly. The father leans in, whispers something in the boy's ear, and just like that, the boy gulps down his broccoli and hurries off to his room. Curious, the mother asks, "What did you tell him?" "I told him that if he didn't eat his broccoli, his Mickey wouldn't grow." Without hesitation, the mother stands up and slaps the father, hard. Shocked, the man rubs his cheek. "What was that for?" "For not eating your broccoli when you were a child." 9. A farmer buys an old, neglected, and abandoned farm, determined to transform it into a thriving success. The fields are overgrown with weeds, the farmhouse is crumbling, and the fences are barely standing. On his first day of work, the town preacher stops by to offer a blessing. "May you and God work together to make this the farm of your dreams," he says. Months pass, and the preacher returns to visit the farmer. To his astonishment, the farm is unrecognizable. The house has been fully restored, livestock graze contentedly in sturdy, well-maintained pens, and the fields are bursting with neatly planted crops. "Incredible!" the preacher exclaims. "Look at what you and God have accomplished together." The farmer wipes his brow and replies, "Yes, Reverend, but you should have seen the place when God was running it by himself." 10. A mechanic was working on the cylinder head of a Harley motorcycle when he noticed a well-known heart surgeon standing nearby, waiting for the service manager. The mechanic called out, "Hey, Doc, can I ask you something?" The surgeon, curious, walked over. The mechanic straightened up, wiped his hands on a rag, and said, "Look at this engine. I open it up, take the valves out, fix them, put everything back together, and it runs like new. So why is it that I earn so little, while you make the big bucks? Aren't we basically doing the same thing?" The surgeon smiled, leaned in, and softly replied, "Try doing it while the engine's running." 11. A 15-year-old Amish boy and his father were visiting a mall for the very first time. Everything seemed like magic, but nothing caught their attention quite like two shiny, silver walls that slid apart and then back together again. The boy asked, "What is this, father?" His father, just as puzzled, replied, "Son, I have never seen anything like this in my life. I don't know what it is." As they watched in awe, an older, heavy-set woman in a wheelchair approached, pressed a button, and rolled between the moving walls into a small room. The doors closed, and they watched the numbers above the doors light up one by one. They stared as the numbers climbed to the top and then started lighting up in reverse order. When the doors opened again, out stepped a stunning 24-year-old blonde. The father, eyes wide and without breaking his gaze, whispered to his son, "Go get your mother." 12. An elderly man burst into the doctor's office, dragging his 5-year-old son behind him. "Doctor, you've got to help. My son got our housemaid pregnant." The doctor, stunned, stares at the child. "Wait, your son? He's only 4. How is that even possible?" The man sighs and shakes his head. Well, last week, I asked him what he was doing with a needle. The doctor raises an eyebrow. And? The man groans. He said, fixing your balloons, Dad. 13. I'm pretty grateful no one can hear my thoughts. I mean, I have way more conversations in my head than I ever do out loud. Honestly, I never knew how funny I was until I started talking to myself. Just the other day, I asked myself, is it weird to talk to yourself? And I answered, nah, we're good. I don't think inside the box, or outside it either. Truth is, I'm not even sure where the box is. Then I just turned around and walked away, leaving myself behind. Now I just hope I'll be home when I get there, because I'd be totally lost without me. 14. Two men are driving in Alabama when they are pulled over by a state trooper. The trooper approaches, bangs his baton on the window, the driver rolls down the window, and the trooper hits him in the head with the baton. The driver says, "Why did you do that?" The trooper says, "You're in Alabama, son. Your license will be ready when I pull you over." The driver says, "I'm sorry, officer, I'm not from around here." The officer checks the man's license, and it is clean. He gives the man his license back and goes to the passenger side and knocks on the window. The passenger rolls down the window, and the policeman strikes him with his baton. The passenger says, "Why did you do that?" The cop says, "I'm just granting wishes." The passenger says, "Huh." The cop says, "I know 2 miles down the road you'll be saying, 'I wish that he had done that to me.'" 15. 3 pastors were having lunch at a diner when the conversation turned to a common problem. The first pastor sighed and said, "Ever since summer started, my church has been overrun with mice. I've tried everything, loud noises, sprays, even getting a cat, but nothing works. They just won't leave." The second pastor nodded and added, "Same here. My church basement is crawling with them. I've set traps, called in a professional, and still, they keep coming back." The third pastor chuckled and said, "I had the same issue, but I found a solution. I baptized all of mine and made them members of the church. Haven't seen a single one since." 16. The kosher bakery's matzah machine's speed-controlled drive system had gone down, costing the company $5,000 an hour in lost profits. In a panic, they placed an emergency call to maintenance. But since it was 3 a.m. on a Sunday, the only available repairman was old Sam. Sam had been with the maintenance team for over 35 years, and with just 2 years left until retirement, he had seen it all. Not much impressed him anymore. As he pulled up to the plant entrance, the security guard waved him through, and the plant manager himself rushed out to greet him. "Thank goodness you're here," the manager said. "How long will it take to fix this?" Sam had barely any details about the issue, but without hesitation, he replied, "Oh, about 15 minutes, so don't worry." "Fantastic," the manager said. "My guys will take you to the drive controls and get you anything you need." 3 hours later, after testing, reading schematics, and asking questions, the system was still down. The plant manager, now furious, stormed over to Sam. "I thought you said you could fix this thing in 15 minutes. Sam sighed and replied, "I can and I will, just as soon as I figure out what is wrong with it."
And before you go, here's the deal. I tell jokes on YouTube, but this is no joke. For every 1,000 subscribers and likes on this video, I will find 50+ homeless people and donate $100 each to them. Hit subscribe and let's spread laughs and kindness. He was a widower and she was a widow. They had known each other for years, having been high school classmates and attending class reunions regularly over the decades. At their 60th class reunion, the widower and widow, along with 2 other singles, formed a foursome. The night was filled with joy, with laughter in the air and spirits soaring high. The widower couldn't help but throw a few admiring glances across the table, while the widow smiled coyly in return. As the evening wore on, their connection grew stronger, and during one of the dances, he finally mustered up the courage to ask her, "Will you marry me?" After a long 6 seconds of careful thought, she responded, "Yes, yes, I will." The night ended with the widower on cloud nine, sure that his future had just been set. But the next morning, doubt crept in. Did she say yes? Or did she say no? He couldn't remember. Despite his best efforts to recall every detail of the conversation, his mind remained blank. He could clearly remember asking, but her response was a mystery. With growing anxiety, he picked up the phone to call her. He started by explaining that his memory wasn't what it used to be. Then, with growing courage, he asked, "When I asked you to marry me last night, did you say yes or did you say no?" She laughed and said, "Oh, you silly man, I said yes." "Yes, I will, and I meant it with all my heart." Relieved, the widower's heart skipped a beat in excitement. Then she added, "And I'm so glad you called. I couldn't remember who asked me.